The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last week, MLAs from all parties met with Diabetes Canada, who spoke of the crisis in diabetes across Canada and especially in Manitoba. There are areas of Manitoba, in the north, for example, where diabetes rates are 20 times the national average. The complications from diabetes are responsible for billions of dollars in healthcare costs, amputations, blindness, heart attack and stroke, but they made it clear that diabetes that is well managed can prevent these terrible illnesses. Earlier this year, this government cut the special drugs program and raised the price of diabetes test strips. I have heard from a constituent who is a senior on a fixed income that she may have to choose between her insulin and bankruptcy because of $4,000 in new costs that are not covered by provincial pharmacare. The Premier often talks about courage when it comes to health care. Can he explain what is courageous about cutting insulin coverage for seniors on fixed incomes?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, I would say, Madam Speaker, our concerns about health care are evident in far more than just the fact we are investing more than $700 million additionally in the budget this year than the NDP ever did. I would say they're better evidenced by our willingness to proceed to work diligently with experts to develop better systems for delivery and to put patient care first. I would also say that they are evidenced in our diligence around restoring a reasonable partnership between the federal and provincial governments across the country for healthcare financing, something the member needs to understand has eroded under the Trudeau government to the point where instead of 25% of costs, they are only absorbing around, well, less than 19, approaching 17 probably over the next year and a half, Madam Speaker. So his federal colleagues won't support us in healthcare. We're doing the job. We're filling in the gaps that they're creating, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, because Manitoba's diabetes rates are so high, there are high levels of kidney failure requiring dialysis, and this government has asked for millions more in special funding for dialysis. While the Manitoba Health Annual Report shows they are cutting $6.7 million from primary care, where diabetes and pre-diabetes are detected. This is like saving money by cutting back on sprinkler systems while spending all your money on fire departments instead. At the same meeting with Diabetes Canada, I met a man whose strict control of his condition resulted in him regaining his sight after 20 years. Is this government willing to invest in prevention by making test strips affordable and paying for insulin pumps so people with diabetes can avoid amputations, blindness, heart attacks, and strokes?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, exactly, Madam Speaker. Investing in preventative approaches is an intelligent strategy, one we are following. And I would share with the member that Diabetes Canada has actually raised its voice and asked the federal government. His colleagues in Ottawa have refused to support that. And so the federal government doesn't want to, or has neglected to, or is dragging its feet on developing a national strategy on diabetes, something that our health minister supports and our government supports, something that I would hope all members of this chamber could support just this one time. The member might like to take a position in support of Manitoba's interests as opposed to Ottawa's.
Here. The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition on a final supplementary.
The Premier has often referred, as he did today, to the fact that federal transfers for health aren't going up as much as they used to. The reason for that, Madam Speaker, is that in 2007, the Conservative government voted to change the Canada Health Transfer. I didn't agree with it then, but the Premier, as an MP in Ottawa, voted for it. Under that change, every single province lost out except Alberta. Manitoba loses $31 million a year under that agreement. And then in 2011, the Conservative government cut back its investments in health. But not a peep from this Premier who said that Manitoba was flush with tax revenue. My question is, when did the Premier realize that he made a mistake by starving his own province of hundreds of millions of dollars in healthcare funding?
The Honourable First Minister.
Madam Speaker, that man couldn't find Truth Town with a map and a compass. There's no way that I supported a change in that formula. I opposed it when I was there. I've opposed it ever since. If he wants to look for someone who supported cuts to healthcare, he doesn't have to look any further than just spin around and look at the member for River Heights. The member for River Heights supported those cuts back in the 90s. They were the wrong thing to do then. They're the wrong thing to do now. In fact, they're even wronger now, Madam Speaker, because our population is clearly aging. And as it ages, the need for health care supports goes up, not down. And Madam Speaker, if the member would simply turn his gaze in the direction of joining with us to oppose Ottawa's reductions of $1.2 billion to Manitoba alone over the next decade in health care transfers, if he would join with our NDP colleagues who have now come to grips with the reality of the danger this poses, we could have a unanimous motion here in the House if he would simply represent Manitobans for a change.
Here.